Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Ric Flair. Richard Morgan Fliehr, better known as Ric Flair, is an American professional wrestling manager and retired professional wrestler signed to WWE under its Legends program. Widely regarded as the greatest professional wrestler of all time and the best American performer of the 1980s, Flair had a career that spanned 40 years. He is noted for his tenures with the National Wrestling Alliance, World Championship Wrestling, the World Wrestling Federation and Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. Since the mid-1970s, he has used the moniker, the Nature Boy, a major pay-per-view attraction throughout his career. Flair headlined at the premier annual NWA/WCW event, Starrcade, on 10 occasions, while also co-headlining its WWF counterpart, WrestleMania, in 1992. After winning that year's Royal Rumble, PWI awarded him the Wrestler of the Year award a record 6 times, while Wrestling Observer Newsletter named him the Wrestler of the Year a record 8 times. The only 2-time WWE Hall of Fame inductee. First inducted in 2008 for his individual career and again in 2012 as a member of the Four Horsemen, he is also a member of the NWA Hall of Fame, Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, and Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. Flair is officially recognized by WWE and Pro Wrestling Illustrated as a 16-time world champion, although the actual number of his world championship reigns varies by source, ranging from 16 to 25. He considers himself a 21-time champion. He was the first holder of the WCW World Heavyweight Championship and the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship. As the inaugural WCW World Heavyweight Champion, he became the first person to complete WCW's Triple Crown, having already held the United States Heavyweight and World Tag Team Championships. He then completed WWE's version of the Triple Crown when he won the Intercontinental Championship, after already holding the WWF Championship and the World Tag Team Championship. Early life. Flair was born on February 25, 1949 in Memphis, Tennessee. His birth name is widely perceived to be Fred Phillips, although on different documents, he is also credited as Fred Demery or Stewart. While his biological parents were Luther and Olive Phillips, he was adopted, and at the time of his adoption, his father, a physician, was completing a residency in Detroit. Shortly afterward, the family settled in Edina, Minnesota, where the young Flair lived throughout his childhood, and after 9th grade he attended Wayland Academy, a coeducational boarding school in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, for 4 years, during which time he participated in interscholastic wrestling, football, and track. American Wrestling Association, 1972-1974. Flair trained as a professional wrestler with Vern Gagne. He attended Gagner's first wrestling camp with Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, the Iron Sheik, and Ken Patera at Gagner's barn outside Minneapolis in the winter of 1971. On December 10, 1972, he made his debut in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, battling George "Scrap Iron" Godowski to a 10-minute draw while adopting the ring name Ric Flair. During his time in the American Wrestling Association, Flair had matches with Dusty Rhodes, Chris Taylor, Andre the Giant, Larry Hennig, and Wahoo McDaniel. Japan, 1973-2013. Flair first competed in Japan in 1973 for International Wrestling Enterprise, due to a working agreement between AWA promoter Vern Gagne and the Iway. After Flair left the AWA for Jim Crockett Jr.'s Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling in 1974, he began working tours for All Japan Pro Wrestling. On April 27, 1978, Flair challenged for the NWA United National Championship in a losing effort. Throughout the 1980s, Flair defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in All Japan against the likes of Genichiro Tenryu, Riki Choshu, Jumbo Tsuruta, Harley Race, and Kerry Von Erich. On October 21, 1985, Flair wrestled Rick Martel in a double title match, where he defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship and challenged for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. But the match ended in a double countout, as All Japan withdrew from the National Wrestling Alliance in the late 1980s. World Championship Wrestling began a working agreement with New Japan Pro Wrestling. In 1989, the working agreement led to a feud between Flair and Keiji Muto, who was wrestling under the Great Muta gimmick in the United States for WCW. On March 21, 1991, Flair defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship and challenged Tatsumi Fujinami for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in a double title match on the WCW/New Japan Super Show at the Tokyo Dome. Fujinami beat Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, but later lost the title at WCW's Super Brawl on May 19, 1991 in the United States. When Flair left WCW for the World Wrestling Federation in 1991, he continued to tour Japan in the super world of sports promotion, due to an agreement between WWF and SWS. He defended and retained the WWF World Heavyweight Championship against Genichiro Tenryu on September 15, 1992 in a match that resulted in a draw. In August 1995, under a WCW contract, Flair participated in the G1 Climax tournament in New Japan, where he beat Shiro Koshinaka, drew Masahiro Chono, and lost to Keiji Muto. On July 17, 1996, Flair challenged Shinya Hashimoto for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in a losing effort in NJPW. Once again under the WWE banner, Flair continued to tour Japan periodically between 2002 and 2008. He successfully defended the World Tag Team Championship with Batista against the Dudley Boyz twice in February 2004. On the February 7, 2005 episode of Raw, broadcast from the Saitama Super Arena in Japan, Flair lost to Shawn Michaels in a singles match. In February 2008, Flair wrestled Mr. Kennedy in the Ariake Coliseum and William Regal in the Budokan Hall, both under the stipulation that he would retire if he lost. On January 2, 2013, All Japan announced that Flair would make his return to AJPW for the first time in 5 years on January 26, 2013, teaming with Keiji Muto to take on Tatsumi Fujinami and Seiya Sanada. This would have been his first professional wrestling match since his September 2011 loss to Sting on Impact Wrestling and his first for All Japan since March 1987. However, on January 26, just moments before the start of the All Japan event, the promotion announced that Flair was forced to pull out of his match because of a sudden illness, later reported as a badly swollen left leg. Flair was replaced in the match by his son Reed, but also ended up getting involved in the match himself, delivering chops to Seiya Sanada. Becoming the Nature Boy, 1974-1981. In 1974, Flair left the AWA for Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic region in the National Wrestling Alliance, and he soon captured his first singles title, when on February 9, 1975 he beat Paul Jones for the Mid-Atlantic TV Championship. On October 4, 1975, however, Flair's career nearly ended when he was in a serious plane crash in Wilmington, North Carolina that took the life of the pilot and paralyzed Johnny Valentine. Flair broke his back in 3 places and, at age 26, was told by doctors that he would never wrestle again. Flair conducted a rigorous physical therapy schedule, however, and he returned to the ring just 8 months later, where he resumed his feud with Wahoo McDaniel in February 1976. The crash did force Flair to change his wrestling technique away from the power brawling style he had used early on, which led him to adopt the Nature Boy style he would use throughout his career. Flair won the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship when he defeated Bobo Brazil on July 29, 1977. During the next 3 years, he held 5 reigns as NWA United States Heavyweight Champion while feuding with Ricky Steamboat, Roddy Piper, Mr. Wrestling, Jimmy Snuka, and Greg Valentine. However, Flair reached elite status when he began referring to himself as the Nature Boy, in order to incite a 1978 feud with the original Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers, who put Flair over in one encounter. NWA World Heavyweight Champion, 1981-1991. On September 17, 1981, Flair beat Dusty Rhodes for his first NWA World Heavyweight Championship. In the following years, Flair established himself as the promotion's main franchise in the midst of emerging competition from Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation. An unsanctioned title loss took place on January 6, 1983 to Carlos Colon Sr. in Puerto Rico. Flair recovered the championship belt in a phantom change 17 days later, not officially recognized by the NWA. Harley Race won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Flair in 1983, but Flair regained the title at Starrcade in a steel cage match. Officially, Flair won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship 8 more times. Flair lost the title to Race, and won it back in the span of 3 days in New Zealand and Singapore in March 1984. At the first David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions at Texas Stadium, Flair was pinned by Kerry Von Erich, but he regained the title 18 days later in Japan and reigned for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days, losing the title to Dusty Rhodes on July 26, 1986 at the Great American Bash. However, Flair regained the title 2 weeks later. In late 1985, the tag team of Arnold Anderson and Ole Anderson began aiding Flair in attacks against Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA and Sam Houston. A few weeks later, the Andersons interrupted Houston's match against Tully Blanchard and the three villains combined to rough up the youngster. Shortly thereafter, Flair, Blanchard and the Andersons formalized their alliance, calling themselves the Four Horsemen, with Blanchard's manager J.J. Dillon also coming on board. Upon the group's inception, it was clear that the Four Horsemen were unlike any villainous alliance that had ever existed, as the four rule-breakers immediately used their strength in numbers to decimate the NWA's top fan favorites while controlling the majority of the championship titles. By 1986, wrestling promoter Jim Crockett had consolidated the various NWA member promotions he owned into a single entity, running under the banner of the National Wrestling Alliance. Controlling much of the traditional NWA territories in the Southeast and Midwestern United States, Crockett looked to expand nationally and built his promotion around Flair as champion. During this time, Flair's bookings as champion were tightly controlled by Crockett, and a custom championship belt was created for Flair. Flair lost the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in Detroit to Ron Garvin on September 25, 1987. Garvin held the title for 2 months before losing to Flair on November 26, 1987 at WCW's first pay-per-view event, Starrcade, in Chicago. In early 1988, Sting and Flair fought to a 45-minute time limit draw at the first ever Clash of the Champions. On February 20, 1989, at Chi-Town Rumble in Chicago, Ricky Steamboat pinned Flair to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. This prompted a series of rematches, where Steamboat was presented as a family man, while Flair opposed him as an immoral, fast-living, ladies' man. Following a best-of-3 falls match, with Steamboat that lasted just short of the 60-minute time limit at Clash of the Champions via Ragin' Cajun on April 2, Flair regained the title from Steamboat on May 7, 1989 at Wrestle War in a match that was voted 1989's Match of the Year by Pro Wrestling Illustrated. On July 23, 1989, Flair defeated Terry Funk at the Great American Bash, but the two continued to feud through the summer, and eventually Flair reformed the Four Horsemen, with the surprise addition of longtime rival Sting, to combat Funk's J-Tex Corporation. This led to an I Quit match at Clash of the Champions 9, New York Knockout, which Flair won. Flair then kicked Sting out of the Four Horsemen upon his challenge for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, resulting in a revived feud between the two. On July 7, 1990, Flair dropped the title to Sting at the Great American Bash. After being unmasked as the Black Scorpion at Starrcade in 1990, Flair regained the title from Sting on January 11, 1991. Subsequent to this title win, Flair was recognized by WCW as the first WCW World Heavyweight Champion, though he was still also recognized as NWA World Heavyweight Champion. On March 21, 1991, Tatsumi Fujinami defeated Flair in a match in Tokyo at the WCW/New Japan Super Show. While the NWA recognized Fujinami as their new champion, WCW did not, because Fujinami had backdropped Flair over the top rope in a violation of WCW rules. On May 19, 1991, Flair defeated Fujinami at Super Brawl I in St. Petersburg, Florida, to reclaim the NWA World Heavyweight Championship and retain the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. In the spring of 1991, Flair had a contract dispute with WCW president Jim Herd, who wanted him to take a substantial pay cut. Herd had removed Flair as head booker in February 1990 and wanted to reduce Flair's role in the promotion even further. Despite the fact that Flair was still a top draw, according to Flair, Herd also proposed changes in his appearance and ring name in order to change with the times. Flair disagreed with the proposals, and 2 weeks before the Great American Bash, Herd fired him and vacated the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. While Flair had left for the WWF, he was still recognized as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion until September 8, when the title was officially vacated. World Wrestling Federation, 1991-1993. Flair signed with the World Wrestling Federation in September 1991 and began appearing on television with the Big Gold Belt, calling himself the Real World Champion. Led by his financial advisor, Bobby Heenan, and his executive consultant, Mr. Perfect, Flair repeatedly issued challenges to WWF wrestlers like Roddy Piper, and Hulk Hogan, wrestling a team led by Piper at Survivor Series in November 1991 and helping The Undertaker defeat Hogan for the WWF Championship that same night. WCW sued Flair in an attempt to reclaim the championship belt, but Flair claimed that he owned the title belt in lieu of the $25,000 deposit paid by NWA champions upon winning the title, which had not been returned to him when he was fired from WCW. At the 1992 Royal Rumble, Flair won the Rumble match to claim the vacant WWF Championship. Flair entered as number 3 in the Rumble match and lasted 60 minutes, last eliminating Sid Justice with help from Hulk Hogan, who had been eliminated by Justice seconds earlier. Randy Savage then challenged Flair for the WWF Championship as part of the double main event at WrestleMania 8. In the storyline, Flair taunted Savage by claiming that he had a prior relationship with Savage's wife, Miss Elizabeth. Savage defeated Flair for the title at WrestleMania in July 1992. As Savage prepared to defend the title against the Ultimate Warrior at SummerSlam, Flair and Mr. Perfect sowed distrust between the two by suggesting that they would back one or the other during their match. They actually attacked both Savage and Warrior and injured Savage's knee, an injury that Flair exploited to regain the title in a match with Savage on September 1. His second reign was short-lived, however, as he lost the title to Bret Hart on October 12, 1992. Flair teamed with Razor Ramon to take on Savage and Perfect at the Survivor Series in November 1992. Flair appeared in the Royal Rumble in January 1993, then lost a loser leaves the WWF match to Mr. Perfect on the next night's Monday Night Raw in a match taped 6 days earlier. Flair then fulfilled his remaining house show commitments, making his last appearance on February 10, 1993, before returning to WCW. WCW World Heavyweight Champion, 1993-1996. Flair triumphantly returned to WCW as a hero in February 1993, as a result of a no-compete clause. He was unable to wrestle, so he hosted a short-lived talk show in WCW called A Flair for the Gold. Arnold Anderson usually appeared at the bar on the show's set, and Flair's made Fife cleaned or bore gifts. Once he returned to action, Flair briefly held the NWA World Heavyweight Championship for a 10th time after defeating Barry Windham at Beach Blast before WCW finally left the NWA in September 1993. At Fall Brawl, Flair lost the title, now rebranded the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship, to Ravishing Rick Rude. At Starrcade in 1993, Flair defeated Vader to win the WCW World Heavyweight title for the second time. In the spring of 1994, Flair began a tweener turn and started another feud with longtime rival Ricky Steamboat and challenged Steamboat to a match at Spring Stampede, which ended in a no contest from a double pin, causing the title to be held up. Flair then defeated Steamboat in a rematch to reclaim the held-up title on an episode of WCW Saturday Night. The WWE does not count this victory as a new title win. Flair then challenged Colonel Robert Parker to wrestle one of his men at Slamboree, which turned out to be Barry Windham, whom Flair defeated. Afterwards he quietly turned heel and took Sherry Martel as his manager. He would also wrestle Lord Steven Regal in a 5-match series under Marquis of Queensberry rules, which aired on WCW Worldwide between April 30th and May 28th, in which Flair won the series, with 2 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. In June 1994, at Clash of the Champions 27, Flair defeated Sting in a unification match, merging the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship with the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, and solidifying his heel turn. After becoming the unified and undisputed WCW champion, Flair feuded with Hulk Hogan upon Hogan's arrival in WCW in June 1994, losing the WCW World Heavyweight Championship to him in July at Bash at the Beach. Flair continued to feud with Hogan and finally lost to Hogan in a steel cage retirement match at Halloween Havoc. Flair took a few months off afterwards before returning as a wrestler and part-time manager for Vader in 1995. On April 29, 1995, Flair wrestled Antonio Inoki in front of 190,000 spectators in Pyongyang, North Korea, at the Mayday Stadium in a losing effort under a joint show between New Japan Pro Wrestling and World Championship Wrestling. The event was broadcast on August 4, 1995 on pay-per-view under the title of Collision in Korea. In the fall of 1995, Flair began a short feud with Arnold Anderson, which culminated in a tag match that saw Flair turning on Sting to reform the New Four Horsemen with Flair as the leader, Arnold Anderson, Brian Pillman, and Chris Benoit as the members. With the New Four Horsemen, Flair won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship 2 more times before the NWO Invasion storyline began in WCW, with the first one being in December 1995 at Starrcade, where Flair defeated Lex Luger and Sting by countout, and then defeated Savage after all 3 Four Horsemen members ran to the ring and Arnold Anderson knocked out Savage with brass knuckles, thus allowing Flair to pin Savage to win the match and the title. Afterwards Savage won the title back on Nitro after Starrcade, but Flair won the next match at Super Brawl V to regain the championship. During the feud, Savage's manager Miss Elizabeth turned against him and became Flair's valet. Together with Woman and Deborah McMichael they would escort Flair to his matches until Miss Elizabeth was taken by the NWO in the fall and eventually returned as Savage's valet when he joined the NWO in 1997. Flair lost the WCW World Heavyweight Championship eventually 3 months later to the Giant. The feud with Savage continued, with the New Four Horsemen joining the Dungeon of Doom to create an alliance to end Hulkamania. Together the factions wrestled Hogan and Savage in a triple steel cage, end of Hulkamania match, losing to the reunited Mega Powers. Afterwards, Flair went on to win the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship, and there were also changes in the Four Horsemen in 1996, as Brian Pillman left WCW and Steve "Mongo" McMichael became the 4th member. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?